Hello everybody!
Hello!
Welcome to today's video, and today we are talking about nutritional labels that we find on our food at the store.
Now when we're looking at labels, there's two main bits that we're looking at. There is the ingredients list and there is the nutritional information, which is usually in a table but sometimes can just be written there.
Nutritional labels can vary depending on where you are in the world, but generally they cover the same information.
Now when we're looking at the nutritional table, there is two main things that we're looking at there. We're looking at the energy count, and that can be calorie or kilojoule depending on where you are in the world, and then also the macros. Now we talked about macros in our last video, but we're looking at the amount of fat in the food, we're looking at the amount of protein, not so much, but yeah, we'll have a look. But big one, we're looking at the amount of carbohydrates and the breakdown of sugar and fiber there.
So one of the first things we look at is the energy value. So this is looking at the calories on the label. Now we do count calories.
Yes.
So when we put in our daily goals, for example in MyFitnessPal or whatever you're counting or tracking your food on, you will have a daily goal, and this is your calorie goal for the day. So this is why we are very interested in looking at the calories that we are consuming.
There is a rumor out there that keto people don't look at calories. We absolutely do, especially if losing weight is your goal.
Yeah.
We absolutely look at the energy count on the food you're eating. So when we're looking at the table and checking the carbs, there's a couple of things that we're looking at. The big one is how much carbs there are in there, first of all, because you're looking at a small daily amount of carbs doing keto. Remember, you're looking at between 20 to 50 grams of carbs a day, so you want to know how much of your daily carbs are going to come from a portion of this. And then the next big thing you want to look at is how much of those carbs are made up of sugars. Now this sometimes will actually be really surprising. Sometimes it's fine, it's not a big deal. Like we said, you will always have some kind of carb in your diet, but this is trying to reduce the amount of carbs that you're having that are not necessary, and also making sure that the food that you eat is clean by getting rid of some of those sugars.
The next component that we look at when we are looking at the carbs on a food label is the fiber component.
Now this is something you'll be taking into account if you're doing net carbs when you're calculating your daily carb intake.
Yeah.
Because you take this away from the carbs.
Absolutely. So it depends on your goals and your numbers that you've got in your tracking app.
And then we'll look at the fats. Now, obviously, doing keto, you want to be taking most of your calories in through fats, 70% of your daily intake, and this is where you'll find that. Now, some foods, everything else will be good, but you might have lower fats than you would like. That's okay. You can add fats back in later on, either by butter or coconut oil or nuts or something like that. Some good clean fats that you can boost it up yourself with. So from there, we move on to the ingredients list. Now, we're doing keto fairly clean, so we're looking to make sure that the ingredients that are in there fit in with what we're doing. The big one being sugars. Now, sugars can be listed flat out as sugar, to be brown sugar or white sugar or whatever it is, just sugar, but can also be cane sugar, even organic cane sugar is still sugar. So the other ways that it can sometimes be listed are things like honey or fruit concentrate, particularly like apple concentrate or dates.
When looking at the sugars, we've also noticed that sugars can be disguised in different names as well. So it's really good to get familiar with some of the terms. So what are some of these hidden sugars that I guess we didn't know about this when we first started our journey, and for us we've learnt these over time. So some of these include maltodextrin. That is probably one of the big ones. We had no idea initially.
Also dextrose.
Dextrin. There's a few variations, but I think just understanding some of the main ones. Sucrose is another bad one.
Another one of the bad ones is aspartame or aspartame, depending on where you're from. It's actually probably going to be easier for us to list the sweeteners that we do have and that we will have in the food. So things like erythritol, xylitol, not the greatest, but we'll sometimes let it through. Sucralose is one like that as well. It's not fantastic, but it's not the worst for you, so we'll sometimes let that one through as well.
I think one of the best ones as well is stevia.
Yes.
Again, so it comes down to your preference or what you're happy to include in your sugar or your sweetener ingredients.
Yeah. So the next thing we're looking for is starch products or starchy ingredients. Now the reason for that though, it's not the starches themselves, but starches turn into sugar in the end anyway, and that's sort of what we're trying to avoid.
Yes, when the body's digesting and all that, so it turns it into sugars.
Yeah.
Then. Yeah.
And so things like rice flour will be listed on there, or potato flour, cornstarch. Those are the sort of things that we're keeping an eye out for to reduce the starches. Technically, even MSG is a starch, so that's one to keep an eye out on as well.
Another ingredient that we will really pay close attention to is the oils and the type of oil that has been used. One of the main ones that we will stay away from is canola oil, also known as rapeseed oil, depending on where you are in the world.
And that's heavily processed, and that's why we don't get into that one.
Yeah. Just a few other oils that we will stay away from is corn oil, soybean oil. These oils have been artificially processed and just aren't good for us. Also, another little general rule of thumb is the less ingredients, the better.
Yeah. One more thing that I'll just jump in and say is to keep an eye on the portion size of your food. The thing that you're eating may have a bit more sugar per 100 grams than you'd hope, but if you're only using a teaspoon of it in a larger recipe, perhaps that's something you might consider actually using anyway. It's up to you. Now, as we said at the very top of this video, depending on where you are in the world, the labels can differ. So what we'll do is we'll put some links down below to some of the food regulatory websites around the world, and you can look at the guidelines for your country there.
So just a quick recap on what we've just talked about, especially if it's the beginning of your ketogenic journey, it'd be really great for you just to get used to reading the labels. So first of all, getting used to reading the energy, and how much calories is in that product, as well as the nutritional information on the label.
Next, in the nutritional information, you want to check the fats and carbs and make sure that you're happy with them.
And finally, that you're checking the label for sugars, artificial sweeteners, and starches.
Now, it does take a little practice and a bit of time to get used to, but the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. So as we said, we'll put those links down below. Have a look if you're interested. If you found this video useful, feel free to share it with someone else who might find it useful as well. And any questions, please put them down in the comments or message us and we'll look into that for you. Hope you found it useful and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.